People think revenge at work is loud. They imagine shouting, slammed doors, angry emails sent too late at night. That's not how it really happens. Real professional revenge is quiet. It starts with one mistake made by the wrong person at the wrong time. I had spent 16 years inside the same company. Same glass tower, same gray halls, same meetings where people talked for hours and said nothing. I wasn't famous. I wasn't loud. I didn't fight for attention. That's why I lasted. My job wasn't to impress. My job was to connect people who didn't trust each other and make sure deals didn't fall apart. On paper, my role looked simple, boring even. But the people who mattered never asked what I did. They already knew. I was the one who knew which promises were real and which ones were just said to make the room quieter. I was 2 days away from closing the biggest deal of my career. Billions on the line. Months of work. Then the door opened. Hard. Too hard for someone who knew the room. A young man walked in like he owned the place. New suit, new confidence. Son of the new executive. First week on the job. He looked at me like I was furniture. Not even important furniture, just something in the way. He told me I was violating company standards. Not the deal. Not the numbers. My clothes, my bag, my image. People stopped typing. You could feel it. He wasn't enforcing rules. He was testing power. He wanted a public win. I told him calmly that I had work to do. That was the mistake. He needed submission. When he didn't get it, he fired me. Right there. In front of people I had trained. People who depended on me. The words sounded big when he said them, but I felt nothing. No anger, no fear, just clarity. I nodded, said okay, and walked back to my office. Panic looks weak. Calm scares people. I packed slowly. Personal items first, then the things that actually mattered. Not files, not documents. Knowledge doesn't live on servers. It lives in people, and I was leaving. Security walked me out like they were embarrassed. He stood there watching, expecting regret. I thanked him. That confused him. I left the building and didn't answer my phone. By noon, legal was calling. By afternoon, partners were confused. By evening, panic had started spreading. The deal depended on details no one else understood. Not because they were smart, because they were human. Old relationships, old grudges, unwritten rules. The kind of things you only learn by being there long enough to make mistakes and survive them. That night, I got a message from the buyer. Not a corporate line, a private number. He asked one question. Did they really fire you? I told him yes. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked me to meet for breakfast. The next morning, we sat across from each other in a quiet hotel restaurant while my old company was falling apart. He told me they lied to him, told him I was sick, tried to buy time, tried to fake confidence. He doesn't do business with liars. He offered me a new role, better pay, real authority, and one condition. He still wanted to attend the meeting. He wanted me nearby, visible, so they would understand. I agreed. The morning of the meeting, I sat across the street in a cafe. Through the glass, I saw the young executive pacing, nervous, angry, trying to control things that were already gone. Then he saw me, sitting calmly, with the buyer's right-hand man. His face drained of color. He ran. Too late. Inside the building, the truth came out fast. Lies collapse when they hit silence. When the buyer asked why the lead negotiator was hospitalized but clearly standing in the lobby, no one had an answer. The deal died in minutes. Billions gone. Voices raised. Accusations flying. The young executive tried to blame me, said I planned it. I told him I only planned to go to work. He planned everything else. 3 days later, their stock dropped. The board begged for another meeting. Apologies were offered. Jobs were promised. Power shifted. The buyer made a new offer. Much lower. Take it or leave it. They had no leverage left. They accepted. I didn't go back. I didn't need to. I walked out of the building for the last time without looking at my reflection, without checking my clothes, without caring who was watching. Professional revenge isn't about destruction. It's about letting people live with the consequences of their own decisions. People assume getting fired is the worst moment. It's not. The worst moment is the silence right after. When the badge stops working. When the elevator doors close and you're still standing there, realizing the system moved on without you. I walked out of the building slower than usual. Not because I was shocked, but because speed would have looked like fear. Outside, the city was loud and busy, like nothing important had happened. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post anything. I didn't explain myself. Explanation is a trap. It turns you into someone asking for understanding. I wasn't asking. I already knew exactly what had happened. The new executive's son didn't fire me because of rules. He fired me because I didn't react the way he expected. He wanted authority to feel real. He wanted someone experienced to bend. When I didn't, he panicked and chose the only move he thought would protect his image. The problem was simple. He didn't know what I actually did. Most people don't. They see titles. They see org charts. They don't see pressure points. They don't see which relationships keep deals alive. That afternoon, my phone stayed silent for almost an hour. Then it started buzzing. First HR, then legal, then people who never called me directly before. I ignored all of it. When people fire you publicly, they don't get private access anymore. I went home, poured a drink, and let them feel the gap. Gaps are uncomfortable, especially when money is waiting on the other side. By evening, I checked one message. It was from a senior partner asking a simple question. Who is handling the final alignment now? That's when I knew the damage had started, because alignment wasn't a file, it wasn't a document. It was me, not my name, not my position, me. The next message came from someone higher, short, careful. Can we talk? I didn't reply. Silence creates imagination, and imagination creates fear. They started replaying the meeting in their heads, the way the firing looked, who saw it, who might talk. Power hates uncertainty. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No alarms, no emails, no pretending I cared about fake urgency. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls from the buyer's side. Not assistants, not coordinators, the buyer himself. That doesn't happen by accident. Someone had finally told him the truth, or at least enough of it to make him suspicious. I waited an hour before calling back. Timing matters. When he answered, he didn't ask how I was. He asked one thing. Did they really let you go? I told him yes. I didn't justify it. I didn't explain. He went quiet. That silence was different, heavy, calculating. The kind of silence that means someone is reevaluating everything they were told. Then he said something I didn't expect. That explains a lot. And in that moment I realized the deal wasn't collapsing because I was gone. It was collapsing because the wrong people were now pretending they understood it. After that call, things started moving fast, but not in the way my old company expected. When someone powerful realizes they've been lied to, they don't explode right away. First, they listen. They let people keep talking. They collect proof. That's what he was doing. I spent the morning doing normal things on purpose. Grocery store, gym, coffee. Not because I didn't care, but because calm creates contrast. Meanwhile, my phone kept lighting up. Messages got shorter, more direct, less confident. People stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding and started acting like it was a crisis. Legal asked if I still had access to documents. HR asked if I had removed company property. Someone from finance asked if I had copies of my notes. I answered none of it. I didn't take anything that belonged to them. What I took was experience, and they had already given that to me for free over 16 years. Around noon, I got another call from the buyer. This time he didn't dance around it. He told me his team had tried to review the deal without me. He told me they were struggling, not with numbers, but with reactions. Every time they pushed on one clause, the other side pushed back harder than expected. Promises didn't line up. Tones changed. He asked me why. I told him the truth. Because the deal was built on trust, not pressure. Because certain parts were emotional, not logical. Because some things were never meant to be optimized. He laughed quietly and said that was exactly what worried him. Then he asked me something that changed everything. He asked if I was under contract with my old company. I told him no. He didn't hesitate. He said we should meet. Not at an office, not with lawyers. Breakfast. Neutral ground, face to face. That's when I knew this wasn't about fixing the deal anymore. This was about control, about who would own the future of it. That evening, I finally listened to one voicemail from my old company. The tone was different now, softer, careful. They said there had been a misunderstanding, that decisions were made too quickly, that they wanted to smooth things over. Those words are always used when someone realizes they pushed the wrong piece. I deleted the message halfway through. You don't smooth over disrespect. You pay for it. The next morning, I arrived early to the hotel. I sat where I could see the entrance. When the buyer walked in, he didn't bring a team, just one assistant. That told me everything. We talked for over an hour, not about money, about people, about why his family cared about certain assets, about why walking away would send a message. He asked me if I trusted my old company. I didn't answer right away. Then I said no. He nodded like he had expected that. Then he made me an offer. Not a job, a role. Authority without noise, independence, and a front row seat to what would happen next. I told him I needed time to think. He smiled and said I had exactly one night, because the meeting was still happening, and he wanted me close enough for them to see what they lost. That night I didn't rush to decide. When someone suddenly offers you power, the worst thing you can do is grab it too fast. Desperation smells familiar to people who trade in influence, and I refused to smell like it. I went for a long walk instead. No phone in my hand, no calls returned, just time. The city at night doesn't care about your career, and that's useful. It reminds you that panic is optional. By the time I got home, I already knew my answer. I just needed to say it out loud. The next morning, I sent one short message to the buyer. I'm in. No explanations, no conditions. He replied with a location and a time. That was it. The meeting day arrived faster than expected. Across the street from my old office, I sat in a small cafe and watched people inside the building move like ants after rain. Lights on early. Too early. When companies turn lights on early, it means someone didn't sleep. Through the glass, I saw the young executive again. The confidence was gone. His posture was tight, shoulders high, phone glued to his hand. He kept looking at the doors like he was waiting for bad news to walk in. Then he saw me, sitting calmly, not hiding, not rushing, just present. His face changed in a way you don't forget. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. He understood something was wrong, but not how wrong. A few minutes later, the buyer's car arrived. Clean, quiet, no show. When he stepped out, he didn't look around. He walked straight inside like he already owned the building. I waited, exactly as planned. Time stretches in moments like that. You become aware of details, the way rain sounds different against glass, the way people avoid eye contact when they're nervous. After 20 minutes, I crossed the street and entered the lobby. The building felt smaller than I remembered, less impressive. Power does that. When you're not dependent on a place, it loses its weight. Inside, everything was happening at once. Raised voices, tight smiles, apologies flying too late to land. I stayed quiet near the entrance. The buyer was standing still, listening. That scared them more than yelling would have. The young executive started explaining, talking too fast, too many words. He lied. I could hear it in the rhythm. Then the buyer said my name, just once. Calm, clear, heads turned, silence dropped. I stepped forward, healthy, calm, very much not fired and gone. The story they had built collapsed instantly. Lies don't survive proximity to the truth. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about choosing where I belonged next. The silence in the lobby was thick enough to feel physical. No one moved, no one spoke. The kind of silence where every thought suddenly becomes loud inside your own head. The buyer looked from me to the executives like he was watching children caught lying with proof in their hands. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse anyone directly. He asked simple questions. Why wasn't he informed about a leadership change? Why was he told I was unavailable due to health issues? Why did the person who built the deal no longer work there? Each question landed harder than the last, because they couldn't be brushed away. The young executive tried to take control again. He said I was insubordinate, that I refused to follow standards, that I was a risk. The buyer turned to him slowly and asked one thing. What standards? That question ended the conversation. The answer sounded small when spoken out loud. Clothes, image, attitude. The buyer smiled, but there was no humor in it. He said he trusted people who focused on outcomes, not appearances. Then he said the meeting was canceled, just like that. No shouting, no drama. He thanked everyone for their time and turned toward the exit. Panic hit instantly. The CFO tried to stop him, promised fixes, promised apologies, promised consequences. The buyer didn't slow down. He said trust, once broken, doesn't wait for committee approval. He left. The doors closed. And suddenly the building was just a building again. The executives turned on each other within seconds. Blame moved fast. The young executive tried to defend himself, but no one was listening anymore. His protection was gone. Power doesn't come from titles, it comes from results, and he had just erased billions in value. Someone asked me to stay, to talk, to help explain. I didn't. I said my role there was over. That was true. I walked out calmly while chaos stayed behind. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt lighter. My phone buzzed. A message from the buyer. Short. Direct. We'll talk later. I knew what that meant. They would come back, but not as equals. They would come back desperate. That afternoon, news started leaking. Rumors of internal conflict, delays, leadership issues. Stock dipped. Analysts started asking questions. The board realized too late that firing one person had exposed everything they didn't understand about their own company. That night, I reviewed the contract the buyer had sent me. It wasn't just compensation, it was control, independence, protection, a clean break from the past. I signed it without hesitation, because revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about making sure you never need them again. 3 days later, the tone completely changed. Messages that once sounded confident were now written like apologies. The board wanted a meeting, not a call, a meeting. They said mistakes had been made. They said emotions ran high. They said the situation was being handled internally. Those phrases always appear when control is already lost. I agreed to attend, but not as their employee, as a guest. That alone shifted the balance. When I walked into the boardroom, every face turned toward me. People who used to talk over me now waited. The young executive was there too, sitting quietly at the far end of the table. No phone, no confidence. His father avoided eye contact. The meeting started with apologies that sounded rehearsed, then promises, promotions, raises, titles. They offered me everything they thought I wanted. Power inside their system. Authority over people who had just proven they couldn't be trusted. I let them finish. Then I told them no. I explained that loyalty only works in one direction when respect exists. They had removed that. The buyer joined the meeting shortly after. Not physically, on screen, calm, polite, uninterested. He made a new offer, a much lower one. He explained why. Loss of trust, loss of stability, loss of key leadership. He didn't negotiate. He gave a deadline. The room felt smaller again. They asked if I agreed with his assessment. I said yes. The young executive finally spoke. He said this was personal. He said I was punishing him. I told him this wasn't punishment, it was consequence. He punished himself the moment he chose image over reality. The meeting ended without resolution. 2 hours later, their stock dropped again. Analysts adjusted ratings. Partners paused cooperation. The damage was spreading. That evening, the buyer called me directly. He thanked me. He said he valued people who didn't confuse ego with authority. He confirmed my new role would begin immediately. I hung up and sat quietly for a moment. Not satisfied, not angry, just done. The next morning, headlines talked about leadership failure and internal chaos. No one mentioned my name. That was perfect. Professional revenge doesn't need credit. It needs distance, and I had finally created it. A week later, desperation replaced arrogance. The company reached out again, this time through people who had never spoken to me before. Consultants, advisors, mutual contacts who suddenly remembered my name. They wanted help restructuring the deal, spinning the story, calming the market. They talked about reputation, about legacy, about fixing what went wrong. I listened politely and declined every offer. I wasn't angry anymore, which surprised them. Anger can be negotiated with, calm cannot. The buyer, now officially my employer, moved fast. He met with other partners, quietly, privately, the kind of meetings that don't show up on calendars. Assets were revalued, risks were exposed. The narrative shifted from growth to survival. Inside my old company, leadership started eating itself alive. Committees formed, investigations launched. The young executive was quietly removed from any decision-making role, but that didn't fix anything. Removing the symptom doesn't cure the disease. Trust had already left the room. I watched it all from a distance. No commentary, no statements. Silence is powerful when people expect noise. One afternoon, the buyer asked me a simple question. "Do you want to finish this?" I knew what he meant. He wasn't asking if I wanted revenge. He was asking if I wanted closure. I told him yes. Not because I needed to win, but because unfinished business invites chaos. We prepared a final proposal. Clean, cold, numbers stripped of optimism. When it was delivered, the board had no leverage left. Accept the offer or face collapse. They chose survival. In doing so, they confirmed everything I already knew. Principles disappear faster than money when pressure arrives. The final meeting happened without drama. No raised voices, no speeches, just signatures from people who knew they had lost control long before they admitted it. I didn't attend in person. I didn't need to. Power isn't about being in the room. It's about shaping what happens after everyone leaves. When the deal closed, the press framed it as a strategic adjustment. Analysts called it a smart exit. Internally, people knew the truth. Careers stalled, promotions froze. The company survived, but it shrank. Influence doesn't die loudly. It fades. The young executive resigned a month later, officially for personal reasons. Unofficially, because no one trusted his judgment anymore. I never spoke to him again. I didn't need an apology. Time delivered something better. On my side, life simplified. Fewer meetings, clear authority, no politics disguised as culture. I chose projects instead of being assigned them. That's real power. One evening, I walked past my old building without slowing down. Lights were on, but they felt dimmer, smaller. I realized something important then. Professional revenge isn't about taking something back. It's about moving forward so completely that the past loses its grip. They taught me a lesson without meaning to. Never confuse position with value. Never mistake noise for strength. And never fire someone who knows where everything connects unless you're ready to watch it fall apart. After everything settled, people expected me to feel satisfied. Like revenge would taste sweet and stay that way. It doesn't. What stays is clarity. I finally understood how fragile most systems are, not because they are badly designed, but because they rely on people who don't respect the weight of their decisions. I saw how quickly loyalty disappears when fear enters the room, how fast confidence turns into blame. The company didn't collapse because of one bad hire. It weakened because it believed titles mattered more than competence, because it rewarded boldness without judgment. From the outside, the story looked simple: a failed deal, a leadership change, market pressure. From the inside, it was obvious. They removed a load-bearing piece and acted surprised when the structure bent. I kept my distance, but I watched patterns repeat. New leaders arrived with the same energy, new slogans, new rules, same blind spots. Organizations rarely learn. They reset and pretend they evolved. Personally, I gained something more valuable than position. I gained control over my time, over who I worked with, over what problems deserved my attention. I stopped explaining my value. If someone didn't see it, I let them move on. That alone filtered out the wrong people faster than any interview ever could. The buyer once asked me if I missed my old role. I told him no, not because it was bad, but because it required me to shrink so others could feel big. I won't do that again. The irony is that the moment you stop needing validation is the moment people start offering it. Invitations came in, quiet offers, boards looking for stability. I chose carefully. Power without peace is just another cage. Looking back, the firing wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was how normal it felt to them. That's the real warning sign. When disrespect is casual, damage is inevitable. I didn't burn bridges. I let them collapse on their own. And I walked away before the smoke cleared. The last thing people asked me was whether I would do it differently if I could go back. The answer is simple: no. Because nothing that happened was sudden. It only felt sudden to the people who weren't paying attention. Power doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes slowly, then all at once. I didn't destroy anything. I stepped aside and let gravity work. The moment they chose ego over understanding, the outcome was locked in. That's the part most people miss. Professional revenge isn't planned like a movie. It happens when preparation meets someone else's mistake. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't leak information or play dirty. I just stopped holding everything together. And the system revealed what it really was without me. If there's a lesson here, it's not about winning. It's about awareness. Know what you carry. Know what depends on you. And never underestimate the damage caused by someone who thinks authority is louder than experience. I moved on with a lighter life and cleaner rules. Fewer people, fewer meetings, more impact. They stayed behind managing consequences they still didn't fully understand. In the end, that's the cleanest form of revenge there is.